Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another chart of the week. I'm Lisa Miller. Well, it's the end of the week and almost the end of September, and the government released a couple of the key indicators relative to the economy. So we saw some inflation data, we saw consumer sentiment data, and spending data. And the hard thing is that things were going in the different direction and they didn't necessarily line up. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to share what I'm seeing in my data. And just like the government data today, my data just came in today as well. So you guys are the first to see it. Let's take a look at this chart. For those of you that have been following along, you know this chart. It's basically, I'm measuring this idea of joy over fear, but as it relates to the economic anxiety and how people are spending. So the three numbers here represent this. The green is 20% are basically saying they're spending as usual, and that hasn't really changed since last month. The yellow is those that are on pause. They're kind of going to wait and see. They're a little nervous, but they're still kind of spending, but just maybe a little bit less. But the red is where we really focus a lot of attention. And what you can see is that the red number is now 35%. So think about that. 1 in 3 Americans are basically saying that they're anxious and very anxious and have pretty much stopped their spending. What we're looking at on this chart is those same data points, but trended over time. And here's what matters is that over time, this data has been shown to be a leading indicator of the economy. And the key point is the gap between the green and the red. The greater the gap, the more likely that we are to be going to have some bumpy water from an economy perspective. So if you look what happened over the summer, you can see that that red line actually went up and that the gap also went up, which is probably why many of you might be feeling that the business might be soft. But if your business isn't soft, let me give you some hypothesis for that. What I'm seeing in my data is that the groups that are more likely to be in the green, they tend to be Gen Z. They're also higher income people, both men and women, but particularly men, and also those that live in the West. So those are more likely above average in the green. But on the other side, those that are more likely to be in the red is lower income people, particularly lower income females, but then Gen X. Gen X is also down at the bottom being very anxious, as well as people in the Midwest. So it's not a one size fits all, it's how people are digesting this economy. But what I will say is a common thread is we're still craving social connections. Over half, or about half, are saying, I am craving time together with friends and family. The other thing is that about a third, maybe they're going out less, but they're actually splurging more when they do. So, what's the so what, now what? I encourage you to think beyond what most companies are doing right now, which is pulling the value trigger. I get it. But what can happen is you commoditize your brand, you discount, and you're not really adding value. So on the other side, it's going to be more challenging. So think about the way to grow sales overnight and your brand over time, as David Novak used to say at Yum. Find the ways to build your brand experience now, and your guests and your customers will really appreciate that, especially when times are so tough. So focus on the experience, not just the discounting. Until next time, thank you.